Welcome to the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 podcast, where we're here to share valuable insight from leading health experts, heartwarming stories from people living with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease, and the latest in health research and treatment. Please subscribe, follow us on social media, and visit bronchiectasis and NTM360.org to learn more. Just a quick note before we get started. This podcast series is intended for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Please consult with your medical provider if you have any questions. Welcome back to the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 podcast. Today we have Christina Hunt. Welcome, Christina. It's so good to have you today. Can we just hear a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today, Alyssa. Again, I'm Christina Hunt. I have been a respiratory therapist for over 20 years, dating myself a little bit here. I work for the COPD Foundation, specifically Bronchiectasis and NTM 360, as the Senior Director of Bronchiectasis and NTM Care Delivery and Education. So essentially, I oversee our educational programs and our new care center network that we are launching this year.
And I heard that the COPD Foundation is celebrating their 20-year anniversary. Can you tell us a little bit about how Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 developed over the last 10 years and really where it came from the COPD Foundation?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, the COPD Foundation has been around for 20 years. I can't believe it. It was, initially started by John Walsh, who had this vision to bring better care, better education, inspire research surrounding COPD. And then in 2007, a group of experts got together from the foundation and in collaboration with some folks from the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, they convened a workshop to kind of sort of discuss the needs of the bronchiectasis community. And then from that meeting, they came to the conclusion that they really needed to develop a bronchiectasis research registry in order to better explore the diagnosis and learn more about it and bring experts from around the country together to learn more about the condition. From that time on, eventually a few years later, they added NTM because it's so closely tied to bronchiectasis. Different diagnosis, but definitely closely tied to the condition. And then in 2016, they established the Bronchiectasis and NTM Initiative. And with the launch of the initiative, we established the Bronch and NTM 360 social community, which is our online support community. And we added content to the website. Eventually, we established our Bronchiectasis and NTM information line, added an ambassador program, more website content, and it grew and grew and grew until 2021 to where we made the decision to kind of rebrand ourselves as Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 because we really felt that we were providing services to the Bronch and NTM 360 division, essentially from kind of all aspects, from research to education to advocacy. We were kind of bringing it full throttle to the community and thought that name with the 360 degrees approach better represented what we were doing. And so now new this year, we're launching the Care Center Network, adding that care delivery aspect to what we do. And so it's a really exciting time, not only for the foundation, but our division as well.
What a great way to serve and adapt to the needs of the community, and I'm so excited to see where the foundation leads us in the next 20 years. With that being said, we need to mention Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 also coordinates World Bronchiectasis Day. And then for those of you who are unfamiliar with World Bronchiectasis Day, this was an initiative that's really led by Bronchiectasis and NTM 360. It was started in 2022 to help raise awareness about bronchiectasis worldwide. Bronchiectasis information really is not as widespread as other lung diseases, and many people have a delay in diagnosis, misdiagnose, or just simply have never heard of it. So on July 1st, organizations from around the world, they contribute to educating the masses, they help to spread awareness, and of course, inform other organizations and those affected of all the different resources that are available and new and upcoming research. What we do know is that bronchiectasis, according to information from 2001, they have an increasing diagnosis rate of 8% per year. So, Christina, how do you feel that World Bronchiectasis Day has an impact on these growing numbers? What does World Bronchiectasis Day do to help these growing numbers?
Well, I think, when people know more about a condition, they essentially inquire to their physician on whether or not they should be tested or not. There is some crossover and overlap between COPD and bronchiectasis. And so there are some patients with with COPD that may go to their doctor and say, hey, I've got these symptoms too. Maybe I should be tested for this condition. And so I think that's been a really great positive piece coming out of World Bronchiectasis Day, that people are becoming more and more familiar with this diagnosis that they'd never heard of before. We'd heard from our community many times that, hey, I've got this diagnosis of bronchiectasis, but I don't know anyone else who has it, which is just such a shame because, there is strength in numbers. And so when you know how to get support and get education on this particular diagnosis, you can better manage it. And so I really believe that we are doing a great thing by spearheading World Bronchiectasis Day. The foundation takes kind of the lead, so to speak, when it comes to gathering all these global advocacy and patient awareness groups together and experts to kind of collaborate on this day. Everybody kind of brings their strengths and pieces of the puzzle together. And then together on July 1st every year, we have this amazing day of awareness that seems to be growing year after year.
Yeah, I've seen information out there saying that the diagnosis of bronchiectasis can be delayed from 12 to 17 years, just misdiagnosed with COPD alone or asthma. So World Bronchiectasis Day really has helped to get the word out there and contribute. And it's so interesting to see what other countries are doing and being able to get together and put all the ideas and make it as streamlined as possible with the education that we're receiving and kind of sharing little bits that other people might not be doing. So it's been making such an impact on the community. So with COPD and asthma being these that patients get a lot of times, and really they might have bronchiectasis along with it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's misdiagnosed and it can take anywhere from 12 to 17 years in some cases for people to get diagnosed?
Well, I think part of the problem is that with COPD and bronchiectasis and even asthma, some of these symptoms can be very similar from one diagnosis to the next. However, to make an actual diagnosis for bronchiectasis, you have to have a high resolution CT scan. It's, there may be some signs that you can see it on chest x-ray, but the gold standard for getting this diagnosis is getting that high resolution chest CT scan. And there's no secret that this type of a way to evaluate and diagnose bronchiectasis, it's not cheap, right? And so, I think also physicians do their due diligence and try to only order these tests when they feel like a patient needs it. So if someone is unable to manage their symptoms and they're getting frequent exacerbations, maybe they go that route. But, if providers feel like they have the management under wraps, patients may not ever get that accurate diagnosis for what they have. And so I think that kind of creates a barrier, is the expense of getting the CT scans, but it really is the best way to diagnose the condition. And patients have to be advocates for themselves and feel like if their treatment and management is not going the way they had planned, and they're having these frequent flare-ups, to really go ahead and try to get this test done to see if they have bronchiectasis so it can be managed correctly.
Could you just tell us and refresh our memory about what a flare-up looks like, or an exacerbation, what that would look like for someone who has bronchiectasis?
Yeah, absolutely. So, somebody who is having a flare up of bronchiectasis typically has a lot of mucus and sputum pooling in their lungs. So they'll present with a congested cough. They may be feeling more tired than they usually do with their typical activity level, but they may have some more shortness of breath. They may be bringing up sputum when they cough that may be off color, like yellow or green. And certainly they may be having an exacerbation if they start coughing up blood, or any amount of blood, and it is atypical from what they usually experience. They should definitely give their doctor a call. Typically, the way to think about it is, if you've had these symptoms and they're not going away after a couple of days, 48 hours max, you should really call your doctor and be seen.
Yeah, I remember in respiratory therapy school, I was taught COPD encompassed bronchiectasis, not that they were two separate diseases completely. As a little refresher on this, COPD stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and it's an irreversible lung disease that primarily involves narrowing of the airway and destruction of the little air sacs that are in the lungs. These are also called alveoli. So the destruction of the lungs, this leads to airflow obstruction, and then it causes a reduction in lung function. COPD is commonly caused by smoking, but it can also be caused by inhaled irritants such as chemicals and fine dust particles, living in a high polluted area, and things of that nature. Bronchiectasis is an irreversible lung disease as well, and this is caused by progressive widening of the bronchioles. This leads to scarring, excessive mucus production, and then reoccurring infection. If you want to know more about that, I would suggest looking at Introduction to Bronchiectasis and the Vicious Cycle with Dr. Axement. So bronchiectasis can be caused by initial insult to the lungs, so pneumonia, lung infections, aspiration, otherwise known as inadvertently inhaling food and liquids into the lungs, GERD, which is where your esophagus and your stomach, they have this valve between them, and the valve doesn't function properly. It causes the backflow of contents from your stomach to go into the esophagus. And then this one can be kind of sneaky, because an estimated 30% of people don't even have any symptoms of GERD. So other things that can cause bronchiectasis are autoimmune disorders, and then actually 40% of the causes are unknown. So with all that being said, and kind of a little definition and background of that, Christina, could you just tell us, when you were in respiratory school compared to what you know now, and how was this growth in the bronchiectasis world? Where did you see yourself 20 years ago, and then where are we now?
When I was in respiratory therapy school, over 20 years ago, you're right, it was kind of, COPD kind of encompassed what we called it an umbrella term. So all of these diagnoses like bronchiectasis, chronic bronchitis, kind of fell under a COPD umbrella, versus, in more recent years, they're saying, okay, no, it is, bronchiectasis is not COPD, and it should be managed differently than COPD. And so that recognition and that statement was pretty strong, in the sense that it established a need for more research, more awareness, more education surrounding the treatment and management of the condition. And I think it has led to, not necessarily, I would say increased popularity probably is the wrong word, but more recognized terms, so to speak, and more interest from the research community to explore how it can be better managed, what are some things that we can do to develop that may help patients treat their bronchiectasis. So it's a really exciting time because of the increased awareness surrounding the diagnosis.
That's a really good point, Christina. COPD and bronchiectasis were actually under this umbrella term, and then that was before 2015. In 2015, they came out with a definition saying that bronchiectasis and COPD are two separate diseases, as I had explained before. So with these diseases being two separate, they need to be treated separately. And if they do have them together, so if they do coexist, then we can define that as overlap syndrome. So bronchiectasis and COPD, they do overlap, and they often overlap. So there's mixed messages on this, but we can read anything from 4% to 72% of people who have COPD also have overlap syndrome. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years what kind of research develops from this. What do you think that people could do to increase their education, to increase their awareness, and to help their family and friends understand what their diagnosis is, or just to help spread awareness to people that you might think is affected?
Well, I think you need to kind of gather some resources, and we have some really great education materials on our website on bronchiectasis and NTM 360 that are available for download, because education surrounding it is everything, especially when it's a big word like bronchiectasis. Many patients have even a hard time pronouncing their own diagnosis. So, gathering as much education and information from reputable sources like our website, that, when you're informing your friends and family about your condition, if you choose to do so, that you have the knowledge and education on how it's treated and managed. So that's number one. Number two is, getting involved. There are ways to get involved in our community, to attend support group meetings that we offer. Patients, family members, friends are always welcome to those meetings to find out a little bit more about the condition. And then supporting awareness efforts that we have through various channels like social media. We have usually ads and promotions surrounding World Bronchiectasis Day and our other educational events throughout the year, and feeling like you can share those with your family members and friends, and letting them know that they're all welcome to learn more about the condition so that they're aware of what you're going through.
So you mentioned the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 virtual support groups, which is also known as the coffee break. I think this is a really nice resource for people if they are looking to help educate their family and friends, because we often learn by other people's questions. So I am an observer. I like to absorb all of the information that I can, and I want other people to start asking questions, and then that perks little questions in me, and it just helps to think of everything as more of a, like they say, a 360 approach to it. We're kind of getting different views from all these different people, plus the professionals. So Bronchiectasis and NTM 360, the virtual support group, is called Coffee Break. And Christina, when can we expect this coffee break?
So the coffee breaks are scheduled the second Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern. They're awesome, like you mentioned. It is just a really great, welcoming environment. And the cool thing about these coffee breaks is they are run by our patient ambassador team. So there's nothing like having an event facilitated by someone that also has the diagnosis. And so, we welcome anyone to join us virtually second Wednesday of every month at 3 p.m. Typically, many of the team members from Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 are also available for the meeting and on the call, and welcome questions and comments and feedback from the community on how we can kind of better serve the community and provide more education.
Thank you so much for being here today, Christina. You are such an inspiration to the bronchiectasis community with all your involvement and initiatives in World Bronchiectasis Day and the Care Center Network. Before we go, you mentioned the Ambassador Program. Could you just tell us a little bit about that? I know that they're celebrating their 5th year of having an Ambassador Program.
Yeah, so the bronchiectasis and NTM patient ambassadors are just a fabulous group of volunteers who are living with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease. They strive to engage other bronchiectasis and NTM community members while sharing resources and education materials. They are the ones that answer our information line. They are the ones that facilitate the coffee breaks. And then, when we have any awareness events, they help to represent our bronch and NTM community. And so they're fantastic. And so if you are passionate about getting involved in our organization and passionate about these two specific diagnoses, we welcome you to inquire about becoming an ambassador. We would love to have more volunteers who would like to get involved in this program.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that people can get involved and really be a part of the change and make the difference. Well, again, thank you so much, Christina, for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bronchiectasis and NTM 360 podcast. We hope that you found today's episode helpful and inspiring. You can stay connected by joining our online community, following our social media, and visiting our website for more resources. And of course, subscribe to this podcast and join us next time for more insight, stories, and tips to help you live well with bronchiectasis and NTM lung disease. Until then, thanks for listening and be well.